Yeah, so my engineer now, she's called Angry Amy. So basically, I based her on my partner, who's funny enough called Amy. So I painted her to look exactly the same as her, which is just hilarious.
Yeah. Rumor has it she wasn't angry until you told her that you had a model named Angry Amy based on her.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Unfounded rumors.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to start with that one. Welcome to State of Play, the series where I talk to some of the best players around the world about what makes their army tick, their background in the hobby, and of course, how they win so many of their games. I'm joined today by Richy Amphlett, who hasn't lost a game across the last 3 GTs he's attended. However, Richy is also a triple threat, winning the most sporting, the best army, and the best overall at the Square Beast GT this weekend just gone.
Although I do think you were robbed, though. I think with the most sporting, I do think you should have got
that.
That's
That's very kind of you to say, but we're not here to talk about me. So you have been doing incredibly well with an army that people have not been doing well with recently. So that's quite an interesting thing to delve into. But before we talk too much about the Dwarves, how did you get your start in Warhammer? When did you get into the hobby initially?
So, I've been playing Warhammer for a really, really long time. Well, I'd say I've been collecting Warhammer. I think
The
my
classic.
yeah. I think my dad got me my first box of I think it was the standard Goblin regiment.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I don't know what year that came out, maybe like 96, 98, something like that. So
The
got
ones you can
those.
buy now in shops.
Yeah, the ones that are weirdly cheaper now than they used to be, which is really
Mm.
strange. But yeah, so those are my first ones. Then started an Orc and Goblin army. Well, I say army, like I don't know. Obviously, can you remember when it was back in the days when you get the blisters of 3
Oh yeah.
and you start collecting as a kid and you get like a unit of about 6 guys and you're like, right,
Mm.
I've got an army now. It's amazing.
It sounds like you
uh,
did similar to me, where you start playing at a young age and then you learn the rules a couple of years later, and it goes from being just moving your models around to actually playing the game a little bit when you're a bit older.
Oh, 100%. I can remember going to like gaming clubs in the 90s where they just
Mm.
kind of let the kids just play in the corner. Like we weren't playing the rules or anything. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, if I roll a 6, I kill your model. Ah, nice. But if I roll a 6, I'm alive and all that kind of stuff. They just kind of left us to it in the corner. But I've been kind of just playing like I've only just kind of started playing properly again. I say only just. It's been about 7 years now. I like, I don't know, it's been a while. It goes by quick. But I dropped out the hobby for years. Like I did it up until I was probably about 13, and then dropped out until about 7 years ago. I
Mm.
moved to the town that I was in now, found a local group, and they were playing. But it was mainly like 40k at the time. So played 40k with them when it was like 7th edition. Played that for a few years, and then played fantasy end times as well, which
Mm.
was really good fun. Did a couple of tournaments of that. That was crazy times.
I have
Real
heard. I'm a little
crazy.
sad I wasn't around for it, but there was a lot of stuff going on as far as I can tell.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I got my 8th edition books out again the other day,
Yeah.
just to kind of have a look through, and the end time stuff's nuts, especially from looking from an old world perspective as well. Like the new rules compared to that is just Magic's nowhere near as good now.
That is the thing that I have heard people talking about the most. It's like, well, at least I don't have to play against Purple Sun, the spell that just kills your entire army on turn 2, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's
Yeah,
seems like an
uh,
improvement to me.
100%. There was one that Lizardman used to be able to do, which was, can you remember the old Realm of Battle tiles? So there was a
Yeah, oh yeah,
spell. So there was a spell they could do where they could pick up a tile and move it to a different place on the battlefield.
that's
So
incredible.
yeah, so if you've got a massive army coming towards you, you could just move it. It's brilliant.
That is incredible. Do they like rearrange everything, or do you just put it on top of another tile? You get to
No,
your models were there too bad, they got
I,
smashed.
I can't really remember. I'm pretty sure you just like swap the tile for another one. It's been a
That
few
would make
years, but I
sense.
just read that. And I was like, what?
Yeah. But of course, the faction that you play doesn't have any magic at all. So when you got back into, you say you got back into the hobby 7 years ago.
Yeah.
When you got into fantasy, what is it that you started playing mostly? Was it dwarves or?
So, I actually got into fantasy a little bit earlier when
Mm.
Old World got announced, going back the eons of lockdown. Basically, me and a couple of my mates in Hereford, which is where we
Mm.
are, I got out my old dwarf army, which I had from when I was a kid, it's all painted. I think I did it when I was probably about 12. It's painted horrendously, but got them out. and started playing. We're trying to pick an edition that we wanted to play, and we decided on 6th edition, just because it was kind of going around that 6th edition was like the most balanced edition and wasn't too crazy. So started playing a few games of that, got a few lads involved in our local area, so there was quite a nice little 6th scene going. And then we kind of saw online and met a couple of other 6th edition players, and there were some events called resurrection events, which are really fun. So they're like narrative campaign 6th edition events, and I've been going to them for probably like 2 years, I think. So that's been really fun. And then when Old World finally come out, I've kind of moved away from 6th edition and gone to the newer edition.
Yeah, it's difficult to keep multiple editions of the same game in your head without confusing them. The overlap is wild.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But like I said, I didn't play Dwarves that much actually. I played Dwarves at the beginning of when I started playing, and then a couple of my mates said that they were too strong. So I swapped out to a couple of different factions, and then my main when I was playing 6th edition was probably Warriors of Chaos. Actually, I was playing a Nurgle faction, so they were quite fun.
Interesting, because at the start of the Old World, people might have said that maybe Warriors plus the Dragon are too strong, whereas Dwarves are definitely not. No one's ever threatened a Dwarf for being too good. That's not where they're stood at the moment.
No, it's kind of the other way around at the moment, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get into the Old World, then let's have a quick chat about, because obviously you do have beautifully painted miniatures, and I will.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're saying that to be polite, but you're very well aware how nice they are. Everyone tells me they're incredible, and then I'm going to put some pictures up through the magic of editing, so you can all see them. But they are beautiful sculpts. As you were saying, they were 3D printed. You've got a lot of really nice unit fillers. They're all painted really cohesively to a lovely standard. Do you want to sort of give us a run through on what the idea was when you started putting the army together?
Yeah, so funnily, the army was actually a Christmas present from my mate Jamie Howard. So he 3D printed me them as a Christmas present, actually. Really, really nice bloke. I just want to say there he's recovering from cancer at the moment. So I'd just like to wish him well. But yeah, he's a great bloke. But yeah, he printed me the start of the Dwarves, so all the Highland miniatures, which have kind of got a like an old kind of Norse theme to them. I don't know if any of you guys out there have kind of seen them, but they're quite very classic looking GW slash kind of a Norse aesthetic, which is really nice. So when I first got those, I was kind of racking my brains for kind of what color schemes I wanted to do. And so I went deep diving into the lore and kind of like the time period at the moment. So in the Old World at the moment, it's about 500 years before where we were before. And there was a couple of Carracks that had been broken during the Great Siege, and one of them was Carrack Drac. So it's like the most northernly Carrack for the Dwarves, and that fell during the Great War of Chaos, which is about to come. I'm guessing it's going to be one of the expansions for Old World 2, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I thought you were going to give a time scale. In about 50 years, in about 4 years.
Yeah. No. I didn't go. Well, I probably did go into that much detail when I was doing it, but I forgot enough. But the color scheme for that was red and black. So I kind of decided on that. And I've got quite a muted color palette whenever I paint anything, really. So I tend to go like really muted and then really bright like contrast colors to go through. So I kind of set on the black and the red. And then like really bright pink glows on the like the magical weapons, basically.
Which it turns out that is a lot of the Dwarves. The pink, I think, because you said black and red, and I was like, I was racking my brains. I was like, I thought they were black and purple, but there is quite a lot of sort of OSL glow to them. Which really
yeah. There's loads of OSL all over it. So basically, it's all Highland miniatures. Apart from I do have some Screeball stuff in there as well. You'll see in the pictures the model that I use is my Thane on BSB is I call him Snorri Pig Rider, but he's a dwarf lord on pig. But I am swapping him out at the moment. Actually, I got the Screeball Bear BSB earlier, so I'm going to put him in instead. So I'm going to have to try and think of a good name for him now.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the names that I would suggest would be terrible. It'd be like Mr. Porkers or something like that.
Well, it's not as bad. So basically, I've got a female dwarf that I use as my general. So she's my engineer. She was a runesmith before. She swapped trades. Because basically all the dwarves have got the same leadership. So you can actually just choose who you want to be your general. So just try and choose the one that's got the lowest amount of points to give away is my advice.
And the least likely to be killed in honourable combat. That's
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So my engineer now, she's called Angry Amy. So basically, I based her on my partner, who's funny enough called Amy. So I painted her to look exactly the same as her, which is just hilarious.
Rumor has it she wasn't angry until you told her that you had a model named Angry Amy based on her.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Unfounded rumors. I wouldn't know where to start with that one. Lovely. Well, so let's get into it then. So at the start of the edition, obviously, I assume, did you start with dwarves at the start of the edition?
Yeah. So start with dwarves. I always said at the beginning that I just wanted to play just dwarves, just stick with a faction. I didn't care if it was absolutely crap. I just wanted to play it through. And lo and behold, dwarves are the second worst rated army in the game by tournament standings, apparently.
Yeah. Although I don't think that's necessarily the second worst army in the game. I think it's a lot of, you have to go with very specific units. But I think a good dwarf army is unpleasant to play against, and I don't mean that in like a negative way, but you've ran me over twice, so that's I've got something to base that on, that's for sure.
100%. I think dwarves are definitely up there. For me personally, I think dwarves are probably one of the strongest armies in the game. I think as soon as you know how to tech into them and you know how the opponents play, I think they're completely up there with the crazy stuff, like personally. Yeah, and the thing is, because everyone thinks they're crap, because all everyone does is just kind of look at like articles on Facebook and on the internet, they see that they're like a rubbish army. So nobody thinks to try really hard into them, and then suddenly you're just getting smashed by them turn 3.
Oh yeah, and but if you look at the stats of the artillery is worse than it used to be, and therefore there can't be anything good in the army. But what if you put cannons in units of dwarves? What if you did that instead? Turns out that's really good. So let's go through the journey of your sort of discovery with dwarves, because the army that you played me with first is very different from the army that you've played against me quite recently. So there's obviously been a lot of change in the list that you've gone with. Where did you sort of start out with dwarves at the beginning of the edition?
Right. So at the beginning, obviously you just kind of look through the book and you're looking at just raw stats, aren't you? So for me, I was like, right, hammerers. That's what I'm going to do. So I painted up a brick of 35 hammerers. So I was going to go 35 hammerers, king in there, a couple of little detachments of thunderers on the side, and then like a couple of cannons. I think I was going to run 3 cannons at the beginning. I got so excited. So I painted all of that straight away. It was like raring to go. Like I couldn't wait for Old World. I've been waiting for it for years. So I tested that out, and all my 3 cannons misfired and blew up and died in the first turn. So roll 3 misfires and 3 ones in a row. So that was absolutely glorious. So I don't know how many points I had. So that's 300 points just wasted straight away. And then I quickly found out that hammerers with a dragon going into them isn't good. And for anyone out there that's like, but they can all challenge. Yeah, that's fine. But if you challenge, then they're still getting a potential for +6 combat res against you. So if you're not combat res stacking, you're going to lose every single combat against the dragon. And it's just difficult. Like they can just munch them. Like they've only got a 5-up save if you're using the hammers. And to be fair, if you're going to take the hammerers, you're never going to use them with their shields in combat. So you're going to lose shield wall. You're not going to be able to do that because you never are. You're always going to chance it for they might not die, so they can hit back with their strength 6 AP2. Do you know what I
mean? Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think hammerers might still be decent, but you've got to using them as the big Death Star is not necessarily how we're seeing infantry used in this edition. Unfortunately, you only have infantry, so you don't get to just go full cavalry or something like that to
yeah, 100%. I was talking to another guy at the event that we were at on the weekend about this actually. And I 100% think that if Dwarf had cavalry, I would run a full Dwarf cavalry army as well.
Oh yeah,
you just would.
Yeah, I believe it's been announced that the Bugman's cart is a chariot coming, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes the sort of scope of dwarves. But we can talk about what you'd like to see in future rules for dwarves down the line. So you start off with your big bricks of hammerers, and you got some games in, I'm assuming, with those.
Yeah. So I got a load of games in with them. Quickly found out that probably wasn't the way to go. Just started getting munched up by everyone's dragons. So I thought then that I wanted to split down and do kind of like almost an MSU kind of style. So I went to the second square-based event, You were at the third, weren't you?
Third or fourth, something along those
Yeah,
lines.
yeah. So I went to the second one, and I took so a king on shield bearers, and then kind of like a big unit of longbeards, a big unit of warriors. I think I took 2 units of warriors, a unit of longbeards, and a unit of iron breakers as well. So like four quite kind of big blocks of infantry, and then I took like MSU squads of crossbowmen and rangers and stuff like that. I didn't take any artillery though.
Mm.
Just because I was like, right, I think I took 2 or 3 min units of Iron Drakes just with the Trollhammer torpedoes. And I was like, right, those are going to act as my cannons.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to march slowly up the board, and then people get to me, and then I'll kill them. That'll be fine. Which it worked out okay. I mean, in the first tournament, I did go unbeaten, which was good. I just got draws left, right, and center because people couldn't table me, I couldn't table them, and then it just kind of ended up being like a stalemate basically. Um, so I did, yeah, I think I won 2 and drew 3, which was quite fun. Like it was really good. It was really good showing for them to be fair, but it did show me that I needed a lot more shooting in the list because people could just, as soon as I had won a combat and I can't catch you, they would then just run away from me. Basically, if I was gonna kill a dragon, they would just run. If I was gonna kill some cavalry, they could just get out of the way, and then I wouldn't get the points for them. So I just saw the need to try and get a bit more shooting in, and then I just didn't put in as much as I needed to. So the event that I met you, I think,
Yep.
was the third one. I took a little bit more shooting in the list, but not enough. I took a gyrocopter in that one. As it destroyed your Doom Diver, I think, straight away in turn 1 or turn
No, the
2.
Doom Diver destroyed itself. You almost put the goblins off the board, but we don't need to talk about that. You know,
Yeah.
it was a dark time in my past.
It was quite a nice tactical. To be fair, I did ask you if you wanted to do that as well. I just don't think you thought I was going to do it.
So yeah, as you say, you put some guns in, but not enough guns.
Yeah. So I think I took the Iron Drakes up to units of 10, which I know the meta kind of standing is 4 units of 5 with the Trollhammer torpedoes. I just like 10. And I'll explain why later, just because I've got a gameplay style that I like doing now, but I don't think many other people like doing it. But so yeah, I added in the gyrocopters, more Iron Drakes, and I don't think I had any other artillery apart from 3 bolt throwers, I think, when I played against you, I think.
You didn't have any bolt throwers because I remember
Did I have
looking at your
none?
army. Yeah, I looked at your army and went, okay, so you got bolt throwers, and you're no, I haven't got any. I was like, but what's that? Oh, it's a unit filler. You just had a bolt thrower in one of the units. Yeah,
Yeah. That was the third event I went to. I took more shooting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we played in the last round, and I null deployed against you. I just sat back in the corner with the intent of just blasting you off the board. It didn't work, but I felt secure out shooting you as an Orcs and Goblins army, which probably does mean you didn't have enough guns in there.
yeah, that was a bit of a nightmare of an event actually for me. I think that one I ended up losing 2 games in that event actually. I lost against Orcs and Goblins, which outshot me, like horrendously outshot me. And I can't remember who else I lost against. Whoever you are, I'm really sorry, I've forgotten our game. But you obviously smashed me, so I've just kind of cancelled it out of my brain.
Was it the Vampire Count Scream list by any chance?
No, I've managed to draw against that. I've never lost against the Scream list actually.
Oh.
But that's no tactical decisions on me. That's just the fact that Dwarves have got really high leadership. So that's nothing on me at all. No skill involved.
If they want to scream at you, they have to be within 8, which is grudging time. So
yeah, that's danger close for a dwarf. We're dangerous on short distances, I heard.
Natural sprinters, I think, is the
100%. But yeah, that event, I ended up losing against 2 armies that just outranged me. I think they might have both been Orcs and Goblins actually. Oh no, one was the Tomb King's 12 of Shabti shooting list, moving backwards and shooting, which I just couldn't do anything about. I just couldn't get to him. This is before I saw the use for drilled as well, and an anvil. So drilled with an anvil, way forward. But yeah, I was just, as soon as that happened, I was like, right, I need to get more shooting in. And then the event that I went to after that one, I took ridiculous amounts of shooting. I think I took 5 war machines.
Wow.
So 5 war machines. I didn't run any rangers in that one. I just relied on the war machines and the iron drakes, and that was good fun. That was good fun. But I don't really rate that many of the war machines actually. So I don't rate the cannons. I don't rate the bolt throwers, and I don't rate the organ gun. I know everyone's going to cry at me now and say they're absolutely amazing, but I just don't rate them at all, to be
Well,
perfectly
the
honest.
organ gun is only 2 artillery dice worth of shots, isn't it? As opposed to the Empire's 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. And our
Yeah.
cannon is only strength 8 and AP2, where theirs is, I think it's strength 10, don't quote me on that, and
I believe it's.
AP3, definitely,
I think isn't it strength 10 AP2, but then it's armor bane 3, but it's also D3 plus 1 damage. I think on the Empire cannon.
which is the clincher,
Yeah.
which is why I've just started taking grudge throwers, which are in this, yeah, they're amazing, which is
Yeah.
the center hole is D3 plus 1 damage, which is better than all of the other ones. Like, don't get me wrong, like the bolt throwers on each side of the flank, like if you can get 2 of them right on each corner with the rune of skewering on, so they're strength 7, no armor saves
Mm.
allowed, right? They might kill a unit of knights, but you're relying on a 5 to hit. And let's face it, in real terms, dice, you're never going to do it.
So I think it's also important to point out that the bolt thrower and the cannon are better against worse players. If your opponent gives you good positional shots against them, you probably didn't need those weapons to beat them anyway if you're playing at a high level. So I think
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
sort of thing that drops out of your list as you get sort of more and more up the rankings and you're playing against better players.
yeah, 100%. And the thing is with artillery, you're not relying on the artillery to do damage. What you're
Mm.
doing, the artillery is there to either snipe heroes, or if your opponent's made a mistake and it can see a hero, it's to do that, or it's to force your opponent to move. And that's really the only reason I take them at all. It's just to force people to do stuff, force people to come into the kill zone, which is right in front of me. Apart from in our game where I just rolled ones and twos the entire first 2 turns and there was 0 kills.
Well, yeah, so just to briefly explain what happened in our game in case it gets referenced, I was playing full yeet, nomadic war, so lots of chariots, lots of boars, and Richie obviously is playing the list that we're going to talk about in a second. But I just put my entire army on the line, went, I'm going to move forwards. You have 1 turn to shoot me, otherwise, yeah. And sometimes you don't get the shots off. But then sometimes you bounce later in the game, so it evened out quite nicely.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've had quite a bit of practice against the nomadic war. I've had quite a bit of practice
Mm.
against like the Beastmen full yeet lists and stuff, just because a few of my mates play them down here. Um, and usually they can't break through. If you're relying on one initial push into
Yeah.
a dwarf line, it's not normally good enough.
Yeah, because
That's
you're not realistically going to flee, so you're probably going to end up in another combat that, sure, you'll get your charge bonuses against the dwarves, but at some point you are going to start losing. It's
Yeah, I mean the entire front line will have stubborn. Like
yeah,
everything that you're going to go into that I want you to go into, because that's the thing with the dwarf. So the dwarf play style is you have to go into it knowing that your opponent's going to dictate all of the game,
mm,
but there's one thing you can dictate, and it's what they hit first. So that's what you need to set up. You need to know where your opponent's dropping, so you counter drop with them, what's going down, and you set up in a specific way so you know exactly what's going to hit you, where it's going to hit you, and you play for knowing that basically.
yeah, absolutely. And there are some quite nasty threats you can put at the front of your army to deter charges, whether that's banners or maybe it's time to talk about those trollhammer torpedoes and attached iron drakes. It's not the other way around. The trollhammer
Yeah,
torpedo isn't in the squad. The squad is the trollhammer, and then everything
oh,
else is just gravy.
100%. Oh, I would say I actually prefer the grenade over the troll hammer. To be
Mm,
perfectly honest, I do prefer the grenade. I think it's quite slept on. A lot of people don't take it, but I really, really like it.
yeah, it's a
So,
lot more
but
consistent if they're charging you. That's for sure.
yeah, 100%. So I took 2 units of Iron Drakes, and I had a third unit, which was a detachment to my Iron Breakers as well. So we won't talk about that one because it never really did too much. So basically, the normal way that I would run my army is with the 2 units of Iron Drakes up the front, in front of the rest of my army. So basically, using them as a screen. So it's quite a dangerous screen because people don't really want to charge into it, but they have to if they need to try and take points. So they're at the front, and then I use the Anvil to buff one of those units that something more dangerous is coming into, trying to get the Rune of Oath and Steel off to try and get them the +1 save and rerollable saves. And then behind the Iron Drakes, I'd normally have my combat units. So I would have the my BSB, which has got the Rune of Grugni, and he gives out an aura buff of a 6-up ward against shooting. So suddenly your Iron Drakes go from just having a 4-up reroll and 1 save to suddenly a 3-up rerolling everything with a 6-up ward and then a 5-up ward against flaming damage. Because most of the damage spells that people use nowadays from battle magic, so it's and fireball as well. So suddenly you're doing all of your flaming attacks into something that gets a better ward against that, which it works really well actually. To be fair,
Yeah,
'cause
very.
you want to.
Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
oh no, yeah. So they are really good. So basically, with the Grudge Hammer, so yeah, it's Grudge Hammer. Yeah, yeah. No, Troll Hammer Torpedo. Sorry. It's got a 24-inch range, Strength 8, AP 3, D3 damage, which is amazing. So they've got really high ballistic skills, so they're hitting on 2s if you're within 12 inches as well. So normally you're going to be hitting on 3s. Or 4s if you've moved, because the Drake guns, which are 18-inch range, Strength 5, AP 1, those have got a rule called Quick Shot, which basically means that they can move and shoot without penalty, and you can also stand and shoot if the enemy is within their move as well, which is probably one of the best rules in the entire game, and I think it's really slept on actually.
It's so hard to interact with because you have to look at your opponent and go, do I want to give them a turn of shooting at max ballistic skill and then overwatch me? Not really, because they're just going to kill me. Do I want to go for a long charge? Not really, because my opponent is hopefully smart and is using terrain to their advantage, but I definitely want to get onto that later because I think that's really strong for dwarves. So there's no sort of real winning play other than try and get around them. And how do you deploy dwarves?
So the normal way that I deploy them is I would have the Drakes in a front line, and then I would have my combat units behind that, with the war machines up behind that, and then the Anvil kind of placed just so its aura buffs can kind of hit everything, but nice and kind of central to everything, because you don't really want it to get into combat like you did.
Yes, I did manage that. But so do you find you normally deploy off to one flank so you can sort of protect your units much more easily and have a
So
smaller frontage?
not necessarily. With the terrain packs that Rob does, what I do quite like to do is I would castle up either next to a wall. So like if there's a building kind of offset, I would go next to that so I don't have to be in a corner. Or if there's a wood, I'll hunker down in the wood and then create like almost a diagonal coming in, which is how I played against you.
Yeah.
So I would have like my rangers in a line coming down, protecting one of my flanks. I just obviously I know we'll talk about the woods and playing for terrain later, but you can really play into some really nice terrain with the dwarves and Empire gun lines as well, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as people play more and more games, the things that seemed not so good at the start, you'll find ways to make them much better, such as protecting your gun lines with making it really hard for your opponent to charge you, because difficult terrain is just a nightmare if you're trying to get a melee army up close. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. But that's the way that like the armies that are kind of considered weaker need to kind of find all of these little bits to do. So obviously it's still a really new edition. People are just kind of going, right, well, dragons are amazing, strength 6 is amazing, and really fast stuff is absolutely amazing. So you've got to try and work out, if you don't want to play one of those factions, how to kind of negate that, how to get around that, and how to use your opponent's kind of like strengths as their disadvantages, really.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. So we've gone through the sort of shooting parts of the list, but I think it's really interesting the other units that you take, because you're dwarves, you're going to end up in combat. You know, we're dwarves,
Yeah.
we fight in melee, obviously. What choices do you go for your melee units?
So I don't particularly take anything that offensive. Actually, I try and kind of max out on the defense and try and withstand the initial charges, kind of withstand, grind down, do a couple of wounds, nothing too crazy. And then I don't take long beards, I don't take hammerers. So my core's filled out with a block of 17 warriors that my BSB sits in. They're upgraded to be veterans, so they can re-roll against the scream lists and anything they need to do with that. They are upgraded to be drilled. They do have the great weapons and the hand weapon and shield, so I can shield wall if I need to. And then I take a unit of rangers, so they're basically there to kind of scout around the edges or just to form a flank line with their 30-inch crossbows. I normally run them fully upgraded, just so they can kind of tank a little bit longer with a 4-up save. And then the iron breakers, I take quite a small little unit of iron breakers, which, as you know, are quite hard to get through. With a
Incredibly tough.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So for anyone that doesn't know, so they've got a 3-up re-rolling 1 save, and then they have a 6-up ward against non-magical attacks, which just off the base of a model is absolutely crazy, and just really good. So I always kind of have them within joinable distance of the BSB, so I can run the BSB and go into them if the real threat's over there. But I kind of just leave them to just gum up a unit basically. So they're there to just be on a slight flank where the opponent hasn't put their best unit, and just gum that up for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And then I'll normally put my characters in just the normal warrior unit, to be perfectly honest. Like, I know they're not the best, only weapon skill 4, strength 3, nothing crazy. But when they get a few different buffs on them, they do stick around quite well. And being toughness 4 means that some stuff's going to really struggle at killing them, which is quite good. And then you start doing the tactic of getting the combat resolution bonuses on them. So my unit of Dwarf Warriors actually has a static combat res of 7, basically, when it's at full strength. And I think it has to lose, I think it's 4 models before it loses that as well and goes down to 6, which is pretty good. With a and then if you can get the Anvil's buffs on that as well, so suddenly they'll be on a 3-up save, re-rolling everything with a 5-up ward because of the Banner of Grugni. So it's pretty good for a lowly warrior unit.
Yeah, it's incredibly tanky, and as you were saying, the combat res, that is sort of the tool to dealing with dragons, especially when you've got something like the BSB in that unit, who is unbelievably hard to kill. Shield bearers add 3 wounds, which I was shocked to hear this weekend, because 3 wounds for, is it 40 points for the shield bearers? It's, I think, something in that sort of realm. Whatever you're paying for it, it is incredibly cheap per wound. In an edition where characters have 2 and 3 wounds, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, 100%. And it really depends how you want to play as well. I know a lot of people want to take really offensive characters, but I've just really stuck down and doubled down on defense. So if you can kind of tank it and then win in combat res, so if they can't do any wounds to you, you're winning combat. That's it's plain and simple, really. Like I'll try and do as many challenges as humanly possible with the with my BSB as well. So I give him the Rune of Gromril, so he's got a 2-up save, re-rolling 1s. Which is pretty nice.
Yeah, no, he is incredibly hard to chew through, as I discovered. And even though he's the BSB, you don't feel particularly at risk chucking him into a challenge, which is intimidating, honestly. He's hard to chew through. And I think it's correct. You know, you're talking about some people like to make really killy characters. That is cool and fun. And, you know, narratively, I love that. But you're talking about a 3-inch move model. Yes, you can do some shenanigans with, you know, Drilled and the Anvil, which I think we should talk about. But realistically, you know, it's not a Bretonnian lord on Pegasus, is it? He's not getting where he needs to be. He's He's fighting the things that have decided to charge him. Is where that goes.
Oh, 100%. It's the way that they've kind of pointed all the runes as well. There is no way that you can make a killy and survivable hero. So you have to pick one. And if you're getting in a challenge, your initiative is going to be lower than what you're fighting. So if you're in combat with a dragon, you can have the killiest have the killiest lord in the world with like doing D6 damage. You're not going to do anything because he's going to kill you before you struck.
Yeah. I think as a game balance mechanic, that's probably good. But because you're never getting the charge off, that does suck for the dwarf player. Great for me. I'm not. You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, great for everyone. Great for elves as well, and great for chaos. It's like, sorry, you guys have your dragons. I don't care. It's fine.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see a dwarf dragon in the future. But
heresy.
Obviously, we've talked about how slow the faction is. Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of a couple of tricks that you can get around the slow movement of dwarves. What have you been using to get around the movement?
So everything that can take drilled, I normally give drilled. So basically with that, it means that you can get a kind of, well, obviously you all know the rules behind drilled. It's basically like movement shenanigans. So you can get like a free reform and get some extra moves and all that kind of stuff. So basically you can yeet a unit of warriors in march column 18 inches a turn with the Anvil. So the Anvil has basically got a spell, and it's the Rune of Haste and Urgency, which is cast on a 10. Which isn't too bad. I mean, a 7 on 2 dice is okay. And basically it means your unit can move again. So if you're in marching column, so say if you start in a line because of drilled, you can just suddenly move into marching column for free, and then you can run 3 times. And then you can move again, so you can yeet up the board, which is it's pretty good. Like a dwarf unit moving 18 inches is pretty scary threat range, but then that is a unit out by itself. So the kind of the best use for that I've found is kind of reinforcing flanks, and
Hmm.
if kind of there's a bit of damage going off on one side, then sending it up that way, or even just at the beginning of the game when your Iron Drakes or say your Rangers or any kind of missile troops are shooting, if they've moved forward and they're still slightly out of range, Anvil, get the models in range so they can start shooting turn 1 or turn 2.
Yeah. So, as someone who's played against dwarves a few times now, I think the thing that worries me the most about it as an opponent is, as you say, moving the range troops. It's very easy to play around the 18-inch range of the Drake guns that you've got in your Iron Drakes. It's
Yeah.
harder to do that when they can move 6 inches through moving once and then moving again through the anvil. Suddenly, if you can be 19 inches away or 18.5, that gives you a lot more agency than having to be the full 24 inches away. Depending on whether you think your opponent's going to move or not, or double move.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it is, especially considering you have to come to the army to try and score points. Unless you're running an artillery army, you've got to come towards it, and it is quite a scary prospect, I think. I know a lot of people like running the four, and I can imagine I don't personally like running the 4 units with the troll hammers, but I can see why people enjoy that. But I can imagine staying out of that's a bit of a nightmare as well, because obviously they
Yeah.
can all be at different angles and cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, and the Trollhammer torpedoes, I think we may have mentioned the stats, but it's a 24-inch gun as opposed to 18, so you've got a lot more agency with you shooting there. Strength 8, AP3, D3 plus 1 damage, is that correct?
Just
Just a
D3,
flat
just
D3.
D3. Yeah.
Just D3.
Yeah,
No worries.
only D3. That's fine.
Yeah. We're sort of verging into 40k stats with those weapons, but
Well, it
yeah,
makes up for the rest of the artillery being tough.
it really does. Yeah, no, I'm not bitter about it. I actually, weirdly, and as someone who's played against it and had to play aggressively into the units, I actually think I'm more worried by the rest of the shooting than I am the troll hammers, because you can kind of play around the troll hammers. You can screen your big stuff. If you've got chariots like I was playing, you can put some wolf riders in front of them and go, well, I don't think you're going to be able to kill them and also shoot the troll hammer in. Not being able to split your fire in Old World does make it harder to get good use of them. But
Oh,
those,
100%.
strength 5 AP1 shots that don't take penalties for basically anything, that is
Yeah.
that is horrifying. And they have a really good
Yeah.
ballistic skill as well. It's ballistic skill 4 on the unit, is it?
Yeah. So they hit
Yeah.
on 3s and 4s most of the time.
Yeah.
But the real cherry with the Drakes is the Cinder Blast grenade. So basically, unfortunately it doesn't have dwarf crafted rules. So those of you who don't know, dwarf crafted means that when you get charged, you don't suffer a -1 to hit. So basically, if you charge my unit of Iron Drakes, my Drake guns can hit you on 3s. Whereas the Cinder Blast bomb, because it's on the unit champion, would be hitting on 2s, but because it doesn't have the dwarf crafted, it's hitting on 3s. But hits on 3s, then it's D6 plus 1, strength 5, AP1 shots, which suddenly means that if you've got a unit of 5, for instance, so that max strength 5 shots would be coming out would be 4. Now it's max 11. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's so good.
It wasn't against you, but I have had an entire unit of Boar Boys just wiped by a standard shoot by Drake. So I think for my health, we should maybe move on and talk about the other things. But let's go a bit more into detail about the Anvil, because this is something that I see a lot of people not taking or not rating very highly. And I think it's an incredible unit.
Yeah, so I was under the same kind of opinion when the edition first came out. I didn't really like it because you just kind of look at it as it is on paper. So it's an immovable object. So it's just basically going to be stuck there, which is going to anchor you into a spot. So you're looking at that and you're going, but Old World's all about movement. I'm going to have to move around. But then you realize after about 20 games that your army doesn't like to move around, so it's probably not too bad.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I kind of looked at the buffs and I just didn't think that they were that good compared to other people's magic. So you're looking at like all of the spells that you're getting from like the Law of Battle and Demonology, and you're like, oh, all of this stuff's better. The dwarf ones are a bit rubbish. But then once you start combining that with how the army plays and the gaps that the army needs, suddenly you just realize the Anvil's actually really well written. And it does really plug up some of those gaps that the army needs. Like it needs more movement, suddenly you can get another army, you can get more units to move. Suddenly you can, if you've got something really crazy coming at you like a dragon, you can pick one of your units that that's going to go into and suddenly go, well, you've got +1 save, and now you can re-roll your saves. There you go, mate, you'll be fine. And then the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, which is basically a much better version of the organ gun.
Well, it's a much better version of every other magic missile. If I'm remembering correctly, 24-inch range, 2d6 hits, strength 4, AP2. Is that right?
No, it's even better than that. 27-inch range.
That was it. There was something I remember because you've printed some cards out, and I looked at it. I was like, that seems wrong. That can't be right. 27-inch range. It's incredible. Yeah, I had a little smirk there when you were saying you looked at the spells and you didn't think they were good. I was like, these are some of the best spells I've seen across it. Like, I wish I could have some of these spells. I think the defensive buffs, I don't think there's anything that really stands up to the level of defensive buffs that you can put on units with the Anvil. That's the real strength of it. And then having a little bit of longer range shooting is quite nice to complement, given that you're not going to be taking as many war machines. But yeah. Are you capped at 1 per army, or could you take 2 if you wanted to?
You can take 2. So I tried 2. I played a battle against Max Cooper, who runs Barefoot Miniatures. If you go on YouTube, you can watch them as well. Really top blokes. So I played against him with a double Anvil list against his Empire. And he run this like Empire are actually no joke. Like they're going to start coming up soon, I think. As soon as people work them out and really work them out, I think they're going to be a bit of not a problem, but you're going to see a lot of them. And he ran this massive block of veteran warriors. And I just couldn't chew through them at all. I just couldn't do enough because they're not panicking because there's a general of the Empire in there. Couldn't do a bloody thing. And then his entire gun line just got to me. And like cannons just left, right, and center were absolutely pinging off the anvils. That was pretty rough. So I won't run 2 again. I think 600 points invested in 2 things that don't move is probably too much.
One is really quite expensive. Yeah. I didn't realize they were quite that much.
Well, they're 235 points, but by the time you start putting some runes on them,
sure,
and you do need a couple of runes on them. So after our game, and I played Pip just before you as well with his Lisbon, it showed me that I really need to put some offensive runes on the Anvil as well. So because you can only use hand weapons with it, so I'm going to try a couple of runes of might and a rune of cleaving probably. So take it up to strength 6 and it'll be AP2 then in combat. So be all right.
Yeah, effectively great weapon attacks. And I think does it get 5 attacks from the Anvil? It's
yeah. 5 attacks, which is pretty good. It's weapon skill 6 as well. So yeah, weapon skill 6, strength 6, 5 attacks, AP2. Not to be sniffed at, and that might deter some units from charging it, actually.
Yeah. I think it probably won't deter them from charging it, but that's fine because then you'll just win the combat. And because people are going to look at it and go, oh, there's your wizard / war machine. Of course I want to be in combat with it. And then you go, yeah, but I'm a dwarf motherfucker. Here's some bad beats for you. Sucks to be you.
100%. Yeah. It's basically how every combat goes as well. That's just with any unit in the army. It's like you see this unit of dwarves and you're like, how many points is a normal dwarf warrior? Just let me check one second.
So I really rate the dwarf warrior. Let's have a chat about the dwarf warrior. I think they're some of the best troops in the game, like the best core unit in the game. They're so good.
I think they're brilliant. I know everyone's like, oh, they're crap. I think they're amazing. So it's they're 8 points of model standard, which is horrendously cheap. So weapon skill 4, strength 3, toughness 4. Now, you take them with the hand weapon shield, so you get shield wall, and then you take them with the great weapons if you need that strength 5 punch. And you can change out between combats. Obviously, if you give ground, you can't change, but if you fall back in good order, then you can kind of swap out what you want to do, which is, they've just got such good utility. And because they're so cheap, you don't mind if loads of them die. You're just kind of like, okay, no worries.
And they for that 8 points, they come default with the heavy armor already, don't they?
Yeah. So they come default with the hand weapons and the heavy armor. And then it's 1 point for a great weapon and 1 point for a shield. So for 2 points, just suddenly you're fully kitted out.
10-point model and you've got everything you need. And also, hey, look, here's some great USRs. Oh, they're already on my profile. I don't have to pay for them like loads of other units already do. They're really good. I like how versatile they are. I don't think you're ever taking them to be like, oh, this is my game-winning unit. But you just go, well, I've got to take some dwarf warriors realistically. I've got to fill the points with something. This can do everything as far as dwarves go.
100%. I think that's the difference between the dwarf book and some of the other books. So like the chaos, you look at dragon ogres and you're like, right, dragon ogres and the dragon, that will win me the game. That's what I'm going to do. or the in Bretonia, it'd be like, right, Peggy Knights and the Baron and the Duke. That'll win me the game.
Anything on a
There's
Pegasus.
yeah, anything on a Pegasus. But in the Dwarf book, there's no one singular thing that's going to win you a game. There's the combined arms detachment of the army is what's going to win you the game. It's just kind of knowing what stuff does, knowing when to put it in, what it to put it into, and how all the units kind of interact with each other. That's what will win you the game. There's no one specific thing, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of summing them up. They're very much a jack of all trades army, where
Yeah,
each model's probably able to do multiple things quite well. And the Rangers really exemplify this because they are good at shooting, they're good at melee. They've got mobility by dwarf standards because you can put them on the board somewhere that you've got to, you decide where they're going at the start of the game after everyone else is deployed. But they're not great at shooting without additional resources put in. You can't start, can't scout them and also put the runesmith in there to get the extra armor bane. They're not amazing in melee unless you go, oh, I'm going to do something stupid and go 20 wide with my Groat weapon.
yeah.
But they're good enough. They tick all the boxes. They're fairly tanky because they're a dwarf. They've just got heavy armor despite being a scout.
Yeah.
I think it's a really fun place for an army to be in, and I really like the sort of overlapping layers that you have in your army.
Oh, cheers. It's a really fun army. And if anyone's kind of on the fence about picking up dwarves, I'd really suggest doing it. They are really fun. I know a lot of people at the moment because I'm in a couple of like discords with other dwarf players, and they're getting quite not upset about them just because they don't think they're as strong as some of the other armies. But I think you can't compare a little short guy to a dragon. You just can't do that. You've got to compare what you can do with the army. You can't just run across the board and smack people. There is a certain way you're going to have to play, and it's just kind of working that out, I think.
Yeah, and if you're looking to improve, I think an army like Dwarfs is a really good one to improve at. If you're playing stuff like Dragons, obviously you'll get better as you play more games, but you have to improve so much more drastically if you don't have the crutch units like a Dragon or something like that. So if you're looking to get a lot better at the game, something like a Dwarf list is a really strong way to get started.
Yeah, and I would say they're quite starter friendly as well. So like if you are just kind of starting out and you want a unit, you want an army that's relatively tanky, that's you're not going to lose horrendously. They're quite a good draw army as well. So if you're first starting out, it's quite hard for people to table a dwarf army. Like even if you're not playing very well, like you probably won't get tabled.
Yeah, no, objectively, and they have the best aesthetic as well. I was
Yeah, 100%.
when my team was looking at doing sort of like a slow grow league at the start of the edition. That went really well, thanks guys. I was like, I'd like to do dwarves, but it's going to be a gun line. That won't be fun for anyone else involved. This is before we saw the rules. I was like, I'll just do something else. Very much regretting that I didn't stick with dwarves because I don't think they are a gun line. They are very much the sort of combined arms that I enjoy playing. But they do have some holes in the roster. So let's have a quick chat about some holes in the roster and what you'd like to see for rules going forward. And I don't necessarily mean the Arcane Journal that's coming up. Obviously, we know there's some Slayers coming in that. We know there's a Chariot, yada, yada. But down the line, rules that we might see or units that you might see added to the roster in 3 years' time, what sort of holes in the Dwarf roster do you think could do with being filled?
So I don't like Slayers.
That's a shame. They're one of the two armies you're getting.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't know. There's a couple of bits wrong with the rules in my opinion. Like you could make them really work by having a massive block of about 40 of them and running that 40 up the middle, and then it's just this unbreakable kind of horde of nutters in the middle of the board. Like that could be a good way to run. But I don't know. I just think the way that they are at the moment, they're not killing anything. They're not living. I'm excited to when the Doomseekers come out. I'm really excited for that. Can't wait to see what they do. So that'll be nice. And any changes that they do to the Slayers will be most welcomed as well, I think.
Perfect, yeah. And that Dwarf Cavalry, holding out.
I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get that. I think we'd be more likely to get one of the gun barges before we ever got the Goat Riders.
Yeah. Sorry, just for reference, for people who have a vague understanding of dwarves, like I did when you initially mentioned this, I thought you meant the Carriage Run Overlords from AOS. I was like, well, obviously we're not getting that. That's not anything like Warhammer Fantasy. But so when you say gun barges, what is it you're referring to?
So if you guys have, and if you read the Gottschalk and Felix books, or if you've played it's a new expansion on Total War as well. It's the Malachi gun barge, basically. So if you have a chance, go and Google that and have a look. And it's basically a dwarf slayer engineer who got kicked out of the engineering guild because he was nuts. Basically made a massive floating zeppelin that's got like 1,000,000 cannons on it, and it's hopefully we get that. That'd be amazing.
That would be incredible. It would give more firepower and more mobility to an army that needs probably both of those, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, like I don't think we necessarily need to say that they need more of any of that.
Sure.
It's their play style. I mean, if you want a bit more mobility, it's probably worth playing something a bit quicker. I think if dwarves were super quick, I think they would just be a bit too strong, in my opinion. I think it's that hard line of balancing factions, isn't it? I think.
Sure.
It's like the down like dwarves have always been really strong, really defendable, but they've always been really slow, and that's the downside.
Yeah.
And I don't think Games Workshop would take that downside away because it's part of the lore of the main part of the play style, really, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. It's not often that you talk to, a faction specialist who is happy to maintain the downsides of his faction, but it is nice to hear. It's a more balanced.
Yeah,
More
yeah,
balanced.
100%. I think you just when you pick the army, you've got to kind of like accept the downsides for it as well. I think it's like you go into it knowing they're slow. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you're playing in high elves, for instance. You go into that knowing that they're toughness 3. And if you turn around and go, well, I want some toughness 4 elves, when you should play chaos.
That does, yeah. Chaos do pretty much everything that you want in any army ever, I guess, unless you're on.
Yeah, no, they're so good. They're so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really hard games. I love every game I play against chaos,
Yeah.
but you guys, you're horrible. You know that. You're horrible, horrible people.
For picking some really good armies.
Yeah.
Lovely. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me. Before we go, one last thing I want to ask. Obviously, we've been through sort of the journey that you've been on from the start of the edition up to now. Are there any changes that you're looking at? Any units that you've got your eye on that you want to test out a little bit more?
Yeah. So basically, I've started with the 2 grudge throwers. So I'm going to try a list that's got 3 grudge throwers in. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try the upgrades on the Anvil. I've been kind of messing around with some miners as well, just for some little ambushing action. So I've been messing around with them. Basically, I've got this really annoying thing of like I'll get really over like, right, I need to do this, need to do that. So I'll paint stuff before I've played with it, and then I'll play with it and be like, oh, that's actually rubbish. So I've got about like 3.5K worth of dwarves painted now.
Yeah.
So if anything comes out in the journal that's really good, I'll be good. That'll be good.
Yeah, that's such a good problem to have.
Yeah, I know. I just get like hyper fixated on stuff. And I'm like, right, I need to do this, and just kind of smash it out. But like I said, I'm going to be starting working on the bear at the moment. So basically, it's a proxy model for my Thane BSB on shield bearers. So the bear's going to be the shield bearers, bearers. Get it?
Very nice.
And so I'm really looking forward to getting on that. And I've got some pirate models. So the pirate slayers that my mate Tom Carley's printed for me. And I'm going to be painting them up as using them as rangers. So that should be quite fun as well. So a nice little project.
Very nice. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blast. Obviously, dwarves, not something that you necessarily think is one of the best armies, so it's really exciting to see people doing well with them. Thanks
Thank you very much.
See you next time.